Meantime, Pope Francis is back in Rome following a two-day trip to Malta. It was his first apostolic journey of 2022. While there, he reminded the faithful that in Christ, a new and improved life is always possible.
Non c'è peccato che non possa andare in questa strada. Dio perdona tutto.
During Mass in front of a crowd of thousands of people, the Holy Father urged attendees to be, quote, tireless witnesses of God's mercy. Pope Francis also made news on his flight back to Rome, where the 85-year-old discussed the situation in Ukraine and his own health. Joining us now from Rome is Courtney Mares, Rome Correspondent for Catholic News Agency. Courtney, great to see you. I know that you were on the Papal plane when Pope Francis gave that in-flight press conference. Talk to us more about that, and what did he tell journalists?
Thank you, Tracy. The first question that came up in the press conference on the Papal plane last night was about the Pope's health. Pope Francis, who's now 85 years old, told us he had problems walking due to an issue with his knee. This was Pope Francis's first trip of 2022, after the Pope canceled a trip to Florence and other public appearances due to his ongoing knee pain. And it was clear to see throughout this trip to Malta that the Pope was having some trouble walking and that extra measures needed to be taken to accommodate the Pope's knee pain. For the first time in his pontificate, when the Pope landed on this trip, he did not walk down the stairs from the plane during the welcome ceremony. Instead, the Pope got on and off the plane using essentially what was a cargo lift. And another special lift was also installed at Malta's Basilica of St. Paul so that the Pope could pray in the Basilica's crypt grotto without having to take the stairs. With that said, despite the pain caused by his knee, the Pope still made an effort to walk down the aisle of the Papal plane to greet journalists, and he even took the time to stop and spent a moment with me in prayer, offering a prayer for my cousin Bobby, who is disabled. It was a beautiful moment and a personal encounter with the Pope that I will never forget.
What a wonderful, wonderful experience. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I want to go now and talk about, what happened on the ground in Malta for the Pope's first visit. Talk to us more about that.
The enthusiasm on the ground in Malta was palpable. Crowds of people of all ages lined the streets and waved Vatican flags wherever the Pope passed by in his Pope-mobile. And in recent years, Pope Francis has often opted to visit countries where Catholics are a small minority. So this trip was distinct because Malta traces its Catholic roots back nearly 2,000 years to when St. Paul was shipwrecked on the island and preached the gospel in Malta in about 60 AD, as is recorded in the Bible in the Acts of the Apostles. And a Maltese priest told me that he hopes that Pope Francis's trip to the island will help to reignite its living faith and inspire people to return to the sacraments after the pandemic. And this message was clear in the Pope's homilies, in which he repeated over and over that the joy of the Church is to evangelize and spread the gospel.
And Courtney, I love that you told us that story about you talking to Pope Francis and praying for your family member. But I also know that he had an emotional encounter with migrants yesterday at an immigration reception on the Mediterranean island. Do you know why the Pope chose this moment to appeal again, for the world to be more open and welcoming to migrants?
As you know, like many on Pope Francis's trips to countries in the Mediterranean, a key theme of this trip was migration. And the Pope urged the local population to be welcoming to migrants and refugees from Africa and the Middle East that arrive on their shores. However, this trip was unique in that it happened in the context of the ongoing war in Ukraine, which was clearly on the Pope's mind throughout the weekend. The Pope met with Ukrainian refugees at the Vatican before heading to the airport. And then in his first public speech, as soon as he landed in Malta, the Pope, without mentioning Putin by name, alluded to Russian aggression by saying, "We thought that invasions of other countries and atomic threats were things of the past, but an infantile and destructive aggression has now been unleashed." When asked by journalists on the Papal plane about whether Pope Francis would consider an invitation to visit Kiev in an act of solidarity with the Ukrainian people, the Pope told us in reply that Kiev is on the table, but he's not actually sure if a trip will be possible.
Well, Courtney, thank you so much for bringing us this report today. We really appreciate it. Courtney Mares, Rome Correspondent for Catholic News Agency. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tracy.